There is a silence beneath every action you take, a silence you rarely hear but always feel. It is a silence of an old wound, of a memory so deep it no longer looks like memory but like fate. I want to speak to that silence tonight, to that hidden chamber within you where childhood shame still lingers, casting its invisible spell on everything you do. You see, the world you inhabit now as an adult is not as free as you like to believe. It is shaped, molded, even haunted by what you could not bear as a child. And unless you are willing to look at it, to open your eyes to the shadow of your own past, you will remain a puppet dancing to strings. You cannot see. When I speak of shame, I do not speak of the simple embarrassment of being caught in a mistake or being laughed at for something trivial. I speak of the primal shame that burns into a child's heart like fire shame that tells you, you are wrong for existing, you are too much, you are not enough. Such messages, whether spoken by parents, by culture, or by life's harsh circumstances, do not just vanish with age. They sink into the unconscious. They become the shadow that follows you wherever you go. And this shadow, unless integrated, will make decisions on your behalf. You will think you are choosing freely, but you are only trying to avoid the same wound being exposed again. Many people imagine they can think their way out of shame, but the psyche is not so simple. The psyche is a labyrinth. A child who felt unseen, who felt that their very feelings were a burden, learns to split off parts of themselves to survive. Perhaps you were that child. Perhaps you learned to smile when you wanted to cry, to be helpful when you wanted to scream, to be invisible when all you wanted was to be held. These adaptations, these masks, they helped you survive then, but now, as an adult, they turn into the bars of your prison. You have mistaken survival patterns for your personality, and you wonder why your life feels hollow, or why you cannot stop pleasing others, even when it costs you your soul. Shame is not just a feeling, it is a binding force in the unconscious. It twists your perception of yourself. It tells you that if people really saw who you were, they would leave, and so you keep playing the roles that you believe will protect you, but every role is a betrayal of the true self. Deep within, there is a part of you, what I call the self, that knows you are whole, that knows you were never broken. Yet you cannot reach this self while you are still running from the ghost of childhood. You must turn around and face the ghost. You must see what it is trying to tell you. I want you to think of a dream where you are being chased. Have you had such dreams? The pursuer is always terrifying, perhaps even monstrous. But I tell you this, what chases you in your dreams is what you have refused to welcome into your waking life. The monster is your pain, your repressed emotions, your shame. When you finally turn around in the dream and face it, something miraculous happens. The monster often changes form. It becomes smaller, weaker, even childlike. This is the work of individuation, to stop running from the inner figures that frighten you, to see that they are pieces of your own soul longing to be healed. Shame often hides behind anger, perfectionism, or the need for control. Have you noticed how hard you try to be flawless? To always be the one who never fails. That is not ambition. That is fear. That is the voice of shame whispering, if you fail, they will see you for what you truly are. This is why you are exhausted, why you cannot rest, even when you have achieved more than enough. You are not driven by the joy of life. You are driven by the terror of exposure. There is also another phase of shame withdrawal. Some of you do not overachieve. You underlive. You hold yourself back. You avoid risks. You fear love, success, or intimacy. Because deep down, you do not believe you are worthy of them. Childhood shame tells you, stay small, do not shine, do not dare to exist fully. And so you sabotage opportunities. You choose relationships that diminish you. You stay where it is safe, but lifeless. Both overachieving and underliving are masked for the same wound. I want to invite you now to a different way of seeing. What if your shame is not an enemy, but a messenger? What if it is the doorway to your deepest transformation in the midst of every culture? The hero must face a descent, a journey into the underworld before they can return with the treasure. Your underworld is your childhood pain. Your treasure is the freedom that comes when you integrate it. You cannot simply cut off shame, because what you cut off will return through projection. You will start seeing in others the very things you reject in yourself. You will judge them for the feelings you cannot bear to acknowledge. Have you noticed this? That the people who irritate you most are often mirrors for your own shadow. Let me give you an image. Imagine a child standing alone in a cold room, believing they are unloved. That child lives in you still. You may have grown up, put on the clothes of an adult, learned to speak the language of competence and strength, but that inner child is still waiting. Every time you feel the sudden sting of unworthiness, every time you panic when someone criticizes you, that is the child crying out. And rather than scolding or ignoring this child, you must turn toward them. You must become the loving parent you never had, the guardian of your own soul. This is not easy work. It will feel like death at first. Because the false self, the persona you built to survive, does not want to die. It will fight. It will tell you that if you take off the mask, you will be destroyed. But I promise you, it is the opposite. The mask is the coffin. Taking it off is the resurrection. To live without shame is not to be shameless, but to be whole. It is to see yourself as you are, with all your flaws and all your brilliance, and to no longer fear your own humanity. Dreams will often guide you here. They will show you symbols of the inner child, or they will present images of exposure, being naked in public, being unable to hide. These dreams are not cruel, they are invitations. They are saying, it is time to stop hiding. It is time to stand in the light. If you pay attention to your dreams, they will reveal what part of you still lives under the weight of childhood shame. You must also understand that the collective unconscious plays a role here. Shame is not just personal, it is cultural. Societies impose their own standards of worthiness, often crushing the individual spirit. Children, being so sensitive, absorb not only the messages of their parents, but of the entire culture. If you grew up in a home or a society that valued achievement over authenticity, you will carry the weight of never feeling enough. If you were taught that emotions were weakness, you will bury them so deep that even you cannot find them. But the psyche does not forget. What is buried becomes the root of neurosis. It will surface as anxiety, depression, or a constant sense of being lost. There is a way through this. It begins with noticing where shame speaks in your life today. Listen to the voice that says, you cannot do this. You do not deserve that. They will leave you if you show who you are. This voice is not truth. It is memory. It is the echo of someone else's fear or cruelty. You can choose not to obey it anymore. But to do so, you must see it clearly. You must name it for what it is, the shadow. I've always said that the shadow, once integrated, becomes a source of energy. The very things you despise in yourself, when brought into the light, give you power, your sensitivity, your vulnerability, your need to be seen. These are not weaknesses. They are the raw materials of your humanity. But they must be embraced consciously. Otherwise, they remain wounds that bleed into every decision you make. And so I ask you, how many of your choices have been shaped by the fear of being unworthy? How many times have you stayed silent when your soul wanted to speak? Or because that child within you feared rejection. Every time you bend yourself to fit into someone else's expectation, you are repeating the story of that child who believed love had to be earned. Every time you abandon your own truth to avoid conflict or rejection, you are bowing to the ghost of shame. And yet, you are not that child anymore. You are not powerless. The walls you built then were necessary for survival, but now they are simply illusions. The door is open, but you must walk through it. To free yourself, you must be willing to feel what you once could not. This is the hardest part, for the psyche resists pain with all its strength. But there is no true healing without the willingness to feel the old wounds. You must allow yourself to remember, not with the mind that analyzes, but with the heart that feels. When you touch that raw place, when you let the tears fall for the first time in years, something profound shifts. The inner child begins to trust you. It begins to understand that you will not abandon it again. There is a dreamlike quality to this healing work. You will find that your memories come alive as if they were archetypal images, scenes that carry a universal meaning beyond your personal history. A child abandoned by a parent is not just your story, it is the eternal archetype of abandonment, of exile. When you face this image, you are not only healing yourself, but participating in the healing of collective psyche. This is why I say that the work of individuation is both deeply personal and profoundly universal. Think of the myth of Persephone, taken to the underworld, torn from the light of her mother's gaze. That myth lives within every soul that has been forced to hide its innocence. Your shame is a form of exile. It drags you into the underworld of silence, fear and self-doubt. But just as Persephone eventually rises, bringing with her the flowers of spring, so too can you rise. The descent is not a curse, but a passage. It is only when you accept the descent that you gain the power to return transformed. Do not underestimate how much shame drives your decisions. It is subtle, like an undertow beneath the surface of your life. You think you are choosing a career, but perhaps you are only choosing the one that will make you seem worthy in someone else's eyes. You think you are choosing a partner, but perhaps you are only seeking someone who will confirm the story you believe about yourself. Even if that story is rooted in pain, until you bring this to consciousness, you will repeat the same patterns over and over, like a wheel that cannot stop turning. The unconscious speaks through repetition. What you do not heal will appear again and again, disguised as fate. The people who trigger your deepest wounds are not coincidences, they are mirrors. They show you what is unresolved within you. This is why relationships can feel so painful. They are not just about love, they are about the unfinished business of the soul. Your partner's criticism, your boss's rejection, even a stranger's harsh word, they awaken the voice of childhood shame. But if you can see this, if you can pause and ask, is this truly about them, or is this about an old wound in me? You take back your power. In the depths of your psyche, there is a place I call the Shadowland. This is where you store all the parts of yourself you believed were unacceptable. Your anger, your desire, your vulnerability, your need for love, they are all there, waiting. Shame tells you these parts are dangerous, but in truth, they are your life force. When you repress them, they do not disappear. They simply turn against you. They become anxiety, numbness, or self-sabotage. The way out is to turn toward them, to speak to them as if they were lost children, because they are. You may feel that this work is too heavy, that it will overwhelm you, but I promise you this, what feels like the end is often the beginning. When you face your shame, you discover that it is not infinite. It is a feeling, not a fact, and beneath it, there is a well of energy, creativity, and freedom. I have seen people who carried lifelong shame suddenly bloom like flowers after rain, once they embraced what they had spent years avoiding. It is as if life itself had been waiting for them to stop pretending. Consider the symbol of the phoenix, the bird that burns and then rises from its ashes. Your shame is the fire. It feels like it will consume you, but it is also the fire of transformation. When you allow it to burn away the masks, what remains is not weakness but truth. You do not have to fear being seen when you no longer hide from yourself. This is the essence of individuation, to bring all parts of yourself into the light, even the parts you believed were unlovable. Think of a time in your life when you felt truly free, even if it was just for a moment. That freedom came not because you were perfect, but because for a brief instant you were fully yourself. No mask, no pretense, just the raw, honest presence of you being. That is what waits for you on the other side of shame. But to get there, you must travel inward. You must listen to your dreams, your body, your feelings, all the ways the unconscious speaks. You must ask yourself not just, what do I want to achieve, but What part of me am I still running from? When you stop running, you begin to see the patterns. You begin to notice that the harsh voice in your mind, the one that criticizes you endlessly, is not really you. It is the internalized voice of someone from your past, a parent. A teacher, or perhaps the collective judgment of society. You can choose to stop believing this voice. You can speak to it as you would speak to a frightened child. I see you. I know you are scared, but I will not let you rule me anymore. This simple act of recognition begins to dissolve its power. I also want you to understand that shame thrives in secrecy. It feeds on the things you never speak about. This is why confession, whether in therapy, in art, or even in a trusted friendship, has such healing power. When you give voice to your shame, it loses its grip. What was unspeakable becomes shared, and suddenly you see that you are not alone. Every human being carries some form of shame. We all walk with wounds, and it is only in our shared humanity that we find the courage to heal. This is where the archetype of the wounded healer emerges. The very wound you carry can become your gift. When you face your shame, you develop compassion not just for yourself, but for others. You see that beneath every mask of perfection, every act of cruelty, there is someone else's shame and fear. This awareness changes you, it softens you, not into weakness but into strength. You can stand in the truth of who you are and meet the world with both fierceness and love. There will be moments when the old shame returns. Do not be discouraged. Healing is not a straight path. It is a spiral. You will revisit the same wounds, but each time you will see them from a higher vantage point. Each time you will bring a little more light. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes simply a part of your story. No longer a chain around your soul, but a thread woven into your wholeness. The journey of healing childhood shame is, in many ways, the journey of becoming truly alive when you are no longer controlled by the fear of rejection or failure. You can act from a place of authenticity. You can choose relationships that nourish you instead of repeating old patterns. You can pursue work that aligns with your soul instead of chasing validation. You can speak, create, and love without the constant weight of what if I'm not enough for the first time. You realize you were always enough. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, what your life would look like if shame no longer held the reins. Who would you be if you were not always trying to earn love, prove a worth, or avoid judgment? It may feel almost impossible to answer because you have lived so long under the shadow that you think the shadow is you. But I tell you now, you are more than this. You are not defined by the mistakes of your past or the wounds of your childhood. You are something ancient, something eternal. A soul that has traveled through the darkness of existence, carrying a light. It has not yet fully remembered. To uncover that light, you must first walk through the terrain of your unconscious. There, you will encounter the figures of your past. The angry parent, the cold teacher, the peer who mocked you, the world that never understood your quiet heart. You will see how each of them left their mark, how their words became your inner dialogue. But you are not doomed to repeat their story. When you confront these figures, not with hatred, but with a calm and unwavering gaze, they begin to lose their power. You realize they were only humans too, bound by their own fears and wounds. It is often in the quiet of solitude that these realizations surface. We are so accustomed to drowning our pain in noise work, the relationships, constant distraction, that we forget to listen. But the psyche speaks in whispers, in dreams, in moments of stillness. I encourage you to sit with yourself, even when it feels unbearable. There is a sacredness to this inner listening. The feelings you avoid: grief, fear, shame, are like locked doors. But when you sit before them long enough, when you dare to touch the handle, they open, and behind them is a reservoir of strength you did not know you had. Think of water flowing over stones. At first, the stones resist, sharp and jagged, but over time, the water smooths them, carves them, transforms them. This is how the soul works on shame. It does not vanish in a single moment. It softens, dissolves, and reshapes you over time. The more you allow yourself to feel and acknowledge what was once hidden, the less power it has over you. What was once unbearable becomes a source of wisdom. You begin to see patterns, not as curses, but as maps, pointing you toward the parts of yourself that need love. Consider the archetype of the shadow again. It is not evil. It is simply the part of you that has been exiled. When you bring it back into the fold of consciousness, it becomes an ally. I have witnessed countless people reclaim parts of themselves they thought they had lost forever, their creativity, their sensuality, from their joy, simply by facing the places where shame had told them they were unworthy. It is as though life was waiting on the other side of that threshold, saying, "Welcome home. Now you are whole." Your decision, every single day, are colored by these unconscious forces. You might think you are choosing out of free will, but often you are reacting, replaying old survival scripts. The child who was scolded for speaking too much will grow into the adult who stays silent in meetings, even when they have brilliance to share. The child who felt invisible will become the adult who overcompensates, striving for recognition in every corner of life. These are not conscious choices. They are reflexes born of pain. But now that you can see them, you can begin to choose differently. There is a powerful liberation that comes from simply naming what you feel. This is shame. You can say, "This is not me. This is an old wound rising again." When you do this, you create a space between the wound and your true self. In that space, you can breathe, you can respond rather than react. You can ask, "What would I choose if I were no longer afraid of being unworthy?" And in that moment, something shifts. You are no longer a prisoner of your past. Healing does not mean erasing the past. It means rewriting your relationship to it. The child you were deserves to be remembered with tenderness, not with contempt. When you look back, do not say, "I was weak." Say, "I was doing the best I could with the tools I had." This is the beginning of self-compassion. And without self-compassion, no real transformation is possible. You cannot shame yourself out of shame. You must meet it with understanding, with the warmth of someone who finally sees the truth. You may notice that as you heal, your dreams begin to change. Symbols that once frightened you become guides. The dark corridors of your dreamscape begin to light up. You may even dream of meeting the child version of yourself. When this happens, listen. Speak gently to that child. Ask them what they need, what they never got to say. This kind of dream work is not just symbolic, it is profoundly real. The psyche does not distinguish between imagination and memory in the way we think it does. When you comfort the child in your dream, you are also comforting the real child who lives in your unconscious. There is a paradox here. To become whole, you must first admit you are not. To become strong, you must first face your vulnerability. This is the essence of the hero's journey, which is not about slaying dragons in the outer world, but about meeting the dragons within. And these dragons are often nothing more than the parts of you that were unloved. They roar because they have been ignored. But when you turn toward them, when you offer them acceptance, they transform. They become protectors, sources of strength rather than fear. Ask yourself now, how much of your life is an attempt to avoid that ancient feeling of being not enough? How many of your choices are made not out of love but out of fear? This is not to condemn you but to awaken you. When you see clearly, you have the power to change. When you stop blaming the outside world, your parents, your partners, your circumstances, you begin to see that the real work is within. No one else can free you from your shame. They may help, but the final key is always in your hands. There is a light that comes when you stop running from the darkness. It is not a light that blinds or burns. It is soft, like dawn after a long night. It illuminates the truth of who you are, not perfect, but whole. And in that wholeness, you find a peace that no external achievement can give you. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You no longer need to chase validation or hide your flaws. You can stand as you are, unashamed, and know that this is enough. When you arrive at this place of wholeness, it is as if the world shifts around you. The same situations arise, the same people appear, but your relationship to them changes. You no longer see yourself as a child who must please everyone to earn love. You begin to sense the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth is inherent. It is not a loud or arrogant confidence. It is a calm knowing, a grounded presence that says, I am here and I am enough. This presence is not built on perfection, but on acceptance of your imperfections, your history, and your truth. There is an alchemy to this process. The shame that once poisoned you becomes the very medicine that heals you, because in touching your own pain, you develop a rare depth of compassion for others. You see their masks for what they are, not lies, but shields built just as yours were. You stop judging so harshly, both yourself and others, because you understand the secret wars everyone is fighting. This shift in perception is a sign that your soul is waking up. The archetype of the wounded healer comes alive within you. Just as the mythical healer Chiron gained wisdom through his unhealable wound, you too can turn your pain into a path for others. Not by preaching or fixing, but simply by being real. People are drawn to authenticity because it is so rare. When you stand without shame, you create a space where others can also begin to take off their masks. Your presence alone becomes healing, and yet, I must warn you, the path of healing is not about erasing all discomfort. The human psyche is a living, breathing organism, and it will always have shadows, even as you integrate your childhood shame. Other layers of unconscious material will rise to be seen. This is not failure, it is growth. Each time you meet the shadow, each time you hold what once terrified you, you deepen into your own humanity. You realize that life is not about becoming flawless, but about becoming whole enough to hold both the light and the dark without splitting. One of the greatest challenges in this work is patience. The modern mind wants instant transformation, but the psyche does not obey the clock of the ego. Healing unfolds like seasons. Sometimes there is spring and everything feels alive. Sometimes there is winter. When you feel stuck or numb, do not curse the winter. It is when the roots grow strongest. Trust the rhythm of your soul. Trust that even when nothing seems to be happening, something deep is stirring. I often tell people that dreams are the voice of the unconscious. The nightly letters from the soul, if you pay attention, your dreams will guide you through the layers of shame and fear. A dream of being naked in front of strangers, for example, might reveal your fear of exposure, but it might also invite you to ask, what would it mean to be seen as I truly am? Dreams of locked rooms, dark basements, or lost children often point to the parts of you that remain hidden. If you approach them with curiosity instead of fear, they will reveal treasures. The shadow, when embraced, becomes not a burden but a source of life, energy. This is why I say that the things you repress are not evil but powerful. Your sensitivity, your longing for connection, your desire to create or express, these may have been shamed in your childhood, but they are the essence of your soul's gift. When you reclaim them, you feel a surge of vitality. Life becomes less about survival and more about creation. You are no longer reacting to wounds, you are responding to the call of your deeper self. The self, as I have often described, is the archetype of wholeness. It is the center that holds all opposites together, light and dark, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. When you begin to heal childhood shame, you are not just freeing the ego, you are moving closer to the self. You feel it as an inner alignment, a sense that you are finally living from the truth of your being rather than from fear. This is not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey. Every day you have the chance to choose. Will I act from my wounded child or from my whole self? You might be wondering how to begin. Beyond listening to your dreams or reflecting on your patterns, one simple yet profound step is to speak truth to yourself. Each time you notice the harsh inner voice, pause, say to yourself, I am safe, I am worthy, I am no longer that helpless child. At first, this may feel like a lie, because shame will resist. But over time, as you repeat this truth, something softens. The old voice grows quieter. A new voice, the voice of the self, emerges, calm and steady. Art can also be a powerful ally in this work. When you write, paint, sing, or dance, you give expression to what words cannot always reach. Shame thrives on silence. It withers when you bring it into creative form. Even if no one else ever sees your art, the act of creating is a dialogue with your soul. It says, I will no longer hide you. I will give you life. Another key is connection. While healing begins within, we are not meant to do this work entirely alone. Find those who can hold space for your truth without judgment, whether it is a therapist, a trusted friend, or a community. When you share your story with someone who listens deeply, you reclaim a piece of your power. You realize that your shame was never yours to carry in the first place. It was placed there by others who could not see your light. And when someone reflects that light back to you, something in you begins to awaken. I want to end this journey with a vision. Imagine standing in a vast field at dawn. The air is cool, and the first light is just touching the horizon. You are barefoot, feeling the earth beneath you. In the distance, you see the child. You once were lonely, frightened, unsure. You walk toward them. They look up at you, their eyes wide, without words, and you kneel and open your arms. They come to you, hesitating at first. Then, with a rush of trust, you hold them, feeling their trembling body against yours. And as you do, you whisper, I see you. I will never leave you again. This moment, though imagined, is real. It is the beginning of your freedom. From this place, you can move forward differently. You can make choices not from fear, but from love. You can create a life that is not an echo of your wounds, but an expression of your soul. This is the gift of facing your childhood shame. It gives you back to yourself. You are no longer controlled by the invisible strings of the past. You are not a puppet, but a living, breathing soul, capable of joy, connection, and meaning. And so I leave you with this truth. Your shame does not define you. Your past does not define you. What defines you is your willingness to see, to feel, to integrate, and to live fully. The journey is not easy, but it is sacred. Each step you take toward your true self is a step toward the collective healing of humanity. Because when one person becomes whole, they light a path for others.